Venture capitalists and private equity professionals are now creators as well. There are many different opportunities for the VCs, PEs, and other different professions to leverage the creator economy. And there is a career opportunity for the creators when it comes to partnering with some of those brands. The easiest way to talk about it is that I want you to look back at one of the pieces of content I've created a little while ago. And the whole idea was to talk a little bit about the exit strategies that are available for the creators. We're not going to go through all of them because really the most relevant one is a transition to business. So when it comes to transition to business, there is a lot of opportunity for the creator to kind of like pick an industry, go into that industry and become representative, whether it is being on the business side of things or actually still be the creator economy expert, but help the business folks who don't have those skills to go and expand their presence in the creator economy. And this is why today I want to talk a little bit about why there is an example of wave of different venture capitalists and private equity folk entering the creator economy and how the creators can leverage this as their career opportunity. First of all, the whole idea of the investment professionals being in the creator content world is not that unusual and not that new. One of my favorite examples, and the company that I personally know a few folks from, is Parker Gale. So Parker Gale is a private equity shop back from Chicago, Illinois. And one of those things that they've done very well, they've been very good at about producing their own content when it comes to the industry, middle market software companies that they invest in, and anything when it comes to acquisitions, selling the companies, and things of that nature. You can look at the website and kind of like see, okay, there's a few subjects, but really the core of it is this podcast that they've created, and they're episodes upon episodes upon episodes. I think they have over 200 episodes now, as you can see, dating way back before the pandemic. We're in the 2020s, 2019s. They've been at it for a while. And they were one of those first examples of the companies that really understood that creating content, whether it is a video or podcast based, and yes, by the way, I don't want to miss the fact that I want to give credit for them. They do have video sources as well, and that's something they've been experimenting more lately. If before it was audio only, they've done a few videos where they actually specifically show their faces, so to speak, and show some slides and show up with some content. But the idea is they recognized that as a young fund that started out of a couple of partners just getting, David and Jim kind of like getting together and deciding they want to open a fund with their third partner, Christina, they really kind of like realized if you want to compete with a lot of these other companies, numerous private equity shops, right? If you have a few $1,000,000 and you have a few contacts, you can open a private equity shop and call yourself a private equity fund. But from their perspective, they decided to be very smart about it. And they started to produce podcast content primarily to help investment companies to be educated, but also potential targets, the startups that they might invest in, to be educated when it comes to what it's like dealing with the private equity. In their case, it's interesting because there's a lot of like negative stigma around being in private equity industry. Transparently, I started my career in private equity and I have a lot of love for it. I feel like it's very misunderstood for the right reasons. There are a lot of bad players in the area. But when it comes to a company that evaluates its options to go and either be sold to someone or get an investment from someone, private equity can be a tough one to consider, especially if you don't know much about it. And this is where these kind of podcasts come in, because essentially Parker Gale went ahead and leveraged the content as a way to educate and get potential acquisition targets comfortable with working with them. And this is a big PR play, educational play, but also it's a good play for the search engine optimization. When it comes to internet, maybe about a decade ago, it was all about print publication, or specifically, I should say, digital print publication, where SEO, so search engine optimization, was driven a lot by referral links and the content that people find useful and cross-shared it on their platforms. So a lot of businesses, to drive the organic traffic to their websites, essentially focused on creating those articles and writing different subjects that are relevant to their audience and relevant to the kind of traffic that they want to acquire. Fast forward to 2025, I think this is where the content is today. Instead of reading, people now are used to consuming a lot more content in video format, whether it's a short form or long form. So now they are interested in learning more through those mediums. So for any company to really promote itself, it needs to have some sort of brand representation online in the video format, or ideally video, audio, and some also text. In Parker Gale's case, they started with a podcast. They already were in the ears of folks, and they were downloaded by like tens of thousands of people who were in the industry or interested in potentially partnering with private equity companies. So as you consider your potential options, hearing and knowing how these guys think was a major win for them when it comes to producing their content that got a lot more companies comfortable of working with them way before they even had their first conversation. And this is one of those major perks of being in the content creation space, even if you're an investment shop that primarily in the past would not even advertise yourself too much. Today, the game is very different. People do a lot of search online, and the white papers or press releases are not the best or more trusted way because they can be just fluff pieces. Content is a lot more interesting, especially long form content for the video and the podcast, because you get to hear how those people think about it. And if you think it's like a one-off and I'm just being very selective, or I'm promoting the brand that I'm aware of, right? And again, transparently, I'm a very big fan of Parker Gale. We can look back at A16Z. So essentially, this is Anderson Horowitz, right, investment shop, and they have video games department, and they essentially started to have this like series of YouTube videos educating folks and kind of like, again, showing that, hey, we are part of the ecosystem, we're part of this community, we're comfortable and we understand what it takes to make a video game, and we actually go and shine a spotlight on a lot of creators, which is again a very interesting approach to how you establish your brand in the space and create that brand trust with potential investment targets through content medium. And there's another good example of the Peers project. So again, transparently, I know their founding team, and essentially this is a very interesting approach to a business idea from the content perspective, because what they essentially do, they created, so there's a group of kind of like the founding teams, they created a set of tools where they can offer to primarily VCs. So they target a lot of the investment community, and they help them figure out, okay, how do you create content? How do you think about content, all the way to the point of actual execution, generation of content, editing the clips. Like, as you can see, they do a lot of different things from the perspective of helping folks in the investment community get educated, understand how to leverage it, and then execute on the idea of content creation. And now if you look across all of those bits and pieces, right, you have essentially your private equity shops, VC shops that realize that for them to establish their brand presence, they need to produce a content and they need to show how they think about certain problems in that industry. From the perspective of the creator economy, there is now an entire ecosystem. And the Peers Project is just one of several different companies that go out there and help VCs and PEs to create content. We're not even touching on the whole like LinkedIn ecosphere and the amount of LinkedIn ghostwriters that are out there that help produce content for those companies to, again, promote themselves and get their name out there. Now you essentially have this ecosystem of the investors realizing how important it is for them to create their brand presence across those creator economy social mediums. And this is where, in my opinion, the creators come in. Coming back to this visual that I showed earlier, you have an opportunity to transition to business as a creator. And primarily the way you would do it, you essentially need to figure out from your focus area, is there a particular industry and niche focus? Maybe you're a finance related creator. Maybe you're a creator in a certain software as a service world. Maybe you're creating a certain industry that is now highly attractive for private equity or VC. Can you be that narrowed focus creator who can help them get their messaging out there, right? You have a lot of transferable skills. You know how the audience work. You know how they think and what kind of topics they're interested in seeing you cover. And you can help those private equity professionals or venture capital professionals learn that and apply that to their content strategy and ensure the kind of content they push out is actually relevant and addresses the questions that that audience that you both now target wants to hear about. And then obviously, because of the fact that you spend some time in that space, you likely already develop a network of individuals who can then look at you, look at kind of businesses that you partner with, and say, hey, if so-and-so partnered with those and I trust their opinion, I likely will trust the company that they're partnering with. So you can be that kind of like gateway to a particular industry for that VC or private equity company. Now, there are a lot of considerations. So if you're on an investment side, if you're a private equity shop, if you're a venture capital shop and you're trying to decide, hey, do I want to enter this space? You kind of need to think about it in the same way, right? You have to consider the kind of audience you're trying to attract, right? And if I would break it down, as a company, you either want to create certain level of reputation in your vendor ecosystem, right? So maybe investment bankers, maybe other private equity shops that you want to sell your portfolio companies to or acquire portfolio companies from, right? So that's one type of audience. The other type of audience can be potential employees and people who will join your team. So there's a level of education of what it's like working in this industry and potentially acquiring, a pipeline of candidates. And then finally, your target audience could be those like investment targets, right? So the companies in that space that you want to invest in, you want to acquire, maybe some entrepreneurs who navigate that environment or people who work for those entrepreneurs. As an investment shop, you want to consider those three audiences. And I don't think you want to go after all of them at the same time. I would say pick. Think about what is your biggest problem, right? If it's acquisition of pipeline for the candidates, it's one thing. Vendor reputation is another thing. Looking at potential entrepreneurs and software targets is a whole other point if you're buying software companies or whatever the companies you might be buying. Once you pick and you chose that destination, again, you have a couple of options, right? You can either go to a company like Pierce Project and you can go work with them and figure out how to create content. You can also figure it out on your own, or actually three options. And the third option is obviously going working with a creator. If you consider working with a creator, one of those things that I would advise is really look at the space and just start searching through YouTube specific industry and maybe some expertise or some very specific niche topic that only folks who are really interested in the industry would cover. So again, if it's software as a service world, I'll probably look for something like revenue operations and a software as a service, or some sort of like revenue recognition policies, right? Like things of that nature where if the content pops up with those key search terms, and if you watch the content that's actually very relevant to that industry, you likely found a creator in that space who are very specific to that industry and might be useful to the topic that you're trying to pursue. And then you can go reach out and you don't have to like create very deep relationships at the first pass, right? The very first initial introduction can be just guest producing a content, maybe being someone who that content creator interviews, and for them it can be an interesting piece of content for their audience. It can be a promotional piece. You could potentially pay them for a small spot in their video, although unlikely unless you have a very clear overlap between the audiences. That's going to be something that I would go to first. I would always try to leverage some sort of like free partnership, cross promotion, things that you can potentially share with their audience, with that creator, that can be useful to them. And with that, you can get some kind of like word of mouth and the brand presence for you as a venture capital or PE shop. And from then on out, depending on what the response is like, what the relationship is like, you can create more of a consulting relationship with a creator. You can figure out different structures by which, depending on how deeply you want to go into content, how deeply they are involved in your kind of like content creation process. And coming back to the Pierce project or any kind of like ghostwriters on LinkedIn, right? There's a lot of opportunities for you to tap into that vendor ecosystem and acquire some of those talented individuals, whether it is part-time, consulting services, or potentially even hiring them full-time and essentially getting that brand strategy going. All I want to make sure you do is that before you kind of like embark on that adventure, really consider what is your final end destination, right? As with any investment, if you're an investment professional, you consider what's that exit strategy and how we're going to take this company from here to that, exit ready state. Similarly here, think about those three potential paths, right? Like, are you trying to advertise to the vendor ecosystem? Are you trying to advertise to potential talent or to potential audience that you want to go and tap for the investment? From then on out, figure out how you're going to do it in terms of what kind of content. Is it more podcast? Is it more short form? Is it more long form? And then decide kind of like, hey, are you building it in-house? Are you hiring a couple of folks at third-party vendors? Or are you going after specific content creators and kind of like decide how you can partner and work with them, starting with free and eventually evolving into something more of a commercial relationship? So from the creator perspective, from the brand perspective, if you're a private equity or venture capital shop, like, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat about and give you an advice. Again, I do it for free and I always enjoy talking about those industries. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for the creator economy to be a very powerful engine that helps drive education, remove some of the confusion, and hopefully drive some lead generation for the businesses. And for the creators, I think it's a great opportunity because not every creator is going to go and open a physical like whatever merch shop or some digital product or some service. A lot of the creators, as they get more mature in their evolution as a creator, would want to have some more long-term career opportunity, especially as they like have kids, buy a house, do other things. And so for them, working with a potential investment shop like this can be a great financial opportunity because it will create more of a stability in their life and potentially will require them spending less time in front of the camera, unless that's the arrangement with a private equity and VC shop, which again, is a lot better because you have a stable paycheck versus you have to rely on the AdSense performance or any kind of like brand partnership deals coming your way. So there are a lot of benefits. There are a lot of ways we can tie those things together. You can always chat with me and reach out, and I can kind of like help you ideate on how that structure might look like or brainstorm on your specific content strategy. It's always a lot of fun. Again, coming from private equity, working a little bit in VC, I love both areas. I think both areas are very useful. Both areas are sometimes controversial, but I think for the right reasons. And there's a lot of ways you can do the job in those industries in the right way. And obviously, I love creators, and I think creators should have more opportunities to partner with brands long term to create that stability in their life for all the hard work that they've done in creating great content and learning about those niches. So, really enjoy seeing kind of like amalgamation and all of those worlds combining. It's like for me my two worlds combining together, so it's always a lot of fun, and I'm always glad to talk to other folks who are in those industries to kind of like go and ideate and explore by ways we can merge those worlds even further, and hopefully to the mutual benefit of everyone involved, including our favorite viewers. So I hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought, or if you have any other questions, or feel free to just ping me and reach out, and we can always find time to chat live. Otherwise, I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.